Welcome to She Considers a Field podcast with coach, encourager, and fellow entrepreneur and homeschooling mama of four, Anna McLaughlin. As a homeschooling entrepreneur, you are uniquely positioned to impact the kingdom of God both deep through your investment in your children and wide through your business. And yet guilt, frustration, and overwhelm can hold you back from all that God has for you. Come with me on a journey to walk in deeper peace, purpose, and joy, because God has given you a legacy to build, and I'm here to help you enjoy the ride. Welcome to the latest episode of She Considers the Field podcast. In just a minute, you're going to be hearing an amazing interview with Tanya Gioia, where we are going to be talking about addiction in all its forms. Listen, you're going to want to be here for this whole entire conversation, and you're going to find out more about why in just a minute. But in the meantime, let me tell you a little bit about my friend Tanya. Tanya knows that for every addict, five people are impacted. Working with women heals a generation. She's been through all the challenges you're familiar with, striving for a career to make her whole, chasing a man to fulfill her, jumping unhealed into a second marriage, managing new babies, an addicted husband, as well as her own codependency, running her own business thinking enough money would save her. Finally, Tanya decided she deserved more in her life, from her life. She set out to learn everything: AA, Alanon, Celebrate Recovery, deep therapy, and decided to help heal others who share similar challenges by getting her professional coaching certification. Tanya now works with women who want to finally heal their marriage and family while supporting their husband through recovery from addiction. She uses her unique Dancing with Joy process to help them become the woman her husband cherishes and the mother that places God and love first to create a truly connected, loving, and supportive family. I told you you're going to want to listen to this whole thing. Now, friends, here's the conversation with Tanya. Hello and welcome to the latest episode of She Considers a Field podcast. I am delighted. And when I say I'm delighted, I'm not just saying that. I am truly delighted to connect you with my friend, Tanya Gioia, with Sober on Purpose, the podcast, the platform, so much beautiful service. Tanya, thank you so much for being here.
Anna, it is always a pleasure. We just had a nice 40-minute conversation. Would have been great to be in the same state, do those things in person. It is wonderful what technology has done for us in this availability to connect.
It's so true. And Tanya and I have gotten to connect several times in the past. I was on her podcast. You'll need to check it out, Sober on Purpose. What we're talking about today. So listen, you might have decided from the title of this podcast, from Tanya's bio, whether you need this conversation or not. And I'm just going to give you a sneak peek of where we're going. You need this conversation. Unless you are Jesus, everybody needs this conversation, because we're going to start out talking about addiction, and then we're going to really dive into how does addiction play out in our daily lives as human beings, whether we're dealing with a loved one who's struggling with a substance addiction, or we're just human beings living life. Now, before we get there, so I gave you that sneak peek because I don't want you to miss this gold that's coming. With that being said, we're going to kind of lay the foundation a little bit more first. So, Tanya, kick us off. Tell us a little bit about where Sober on Purpose came from and really your heart behind your ministry.
So, Sober on Purpose came from what I'm calling cops, courts, and chickens.
I'm hooked.
If anybody has ever owned chickens, we owned 400 chickens.
Wow.
And 2 boys, a dog, 2 horses, and 20 acres out in Northwest Colorado. And it was awesome. We had just built a house. Everything I thought was going well. And then I realized it wasn't. And as that began to progress, I got crazier and crazier. And here's the trippy part of it. I'd already been in Alanon for a long time. And before I married my husband, we had talked about it. He had some substance use things going on. In my naivete, he said, I'm going to quit. And I went, okay, you're going to quit. He bounced into AA. I bounced into Alanon. 12 months, 12 steps. Boom. We're out of there, right?
You got it. All done. Fixed.
All done. All sewed up. All done. I have everything I need. Here's my 20-year chip.
Wow.
So it didn't happen. It didn't happen like that. I didn't completely understand it. I didn't have a whole lot of information, but quite actually, Anna, I didn't want to know.
Yes.
I really didn't wanna know. I got what I needed, I got a sponsor, he got a sponsor, we seemed to be doing okay, everything seemed to be fine. We bounced in June, we got married in September, we were already locked in
Yes.
at that point. I
Mhm.
wasn't changing my mind. We we were already on the plan, and as the fixer that I am, that I didn't know that I was, I'm like,
Mhm.
"This is no problem. There's
Yeah.
groups for this. We got this handled." So here we are, 400 chickens, December, 5 days before Christmas, and cops.
Wow.
None of that was fun, and you can read the total details over on my website. None of that was fun. It led to 3 months of solid, no contact,
Mm.
23-month separation, all of those things happening, and here's the real part of it that God grew me up. He said, "Child, you're not ready for him to get well. If he gets
Mm.
well and you don't do the work, it's going to explode anyway."
Mhm.
Now that is not something you wanna hear from God. I don't care how
Yeah.
intimate you are with God, but you don't wanna hear that the dumping ground could be, okay, this person has a substance use issue and everything that's wrong is because they have a substance use issue, right?
Right.
So
Right.
that the kids are acting out, the mortgage isn't getting paid, I don't know, the chickens are running around and they're up on the deck or trying to climb in the house. That's the problem because my husband was using substance.
Yes.
Well, come to find out, once we move through that hump, life has issues.
Mhm.
Life has a lot of issues, and I was not equipped to share the reins with another adult. Because of
Mm.
how I came into this relationship, I came in saying, "Okay, I think I want a real man, and I think I want somebody who's fully capable." But I wasn't mature enough to handle it. I wasn't mature enough in Christ. I wasn't mature enough in myself. And Anna, I was 35. I
Yes.
was no I was
Yes.
no spring chicken. So
Right. Okay, so talk to me about that because when you talk about not mature enough to have this true partner, this man, as opposed to somebody that I'm kind of having to you didn't exactly say this, but I know this space myself where we're kind of like mothering the person who's struggling
yes.
with addiction. Well, "Oh, I'll take care of it. I'll help you. You can do this. I'll remind you. I'll encourage you." So, what's the root? What do we need to do when we're in this place where we have that moment with the Lord where it's like, "Oh, I don't actually want him well. I'm not ready for that."
Right. What do we need to do? Hmm. The key thing is to say, "I'm not their savior."
Mm.
Boom.
Mhm.
Right there. When the person who has been supporting the one who is struggling, I'm not saying don't love them. I'm not saying don't care about them. What I'm saying is to look at your own behaviors. Are you continuing to make possible what they are doing because it is feeding you in some way? Is
Mhm.
it giving you a job? Is it giving you a role in the family? Is it allowing you to feel like the righteous older brother in the
Mhm.
prodigal son? So
Mhm.
that's where we really begin to nail it is the prodigal knows that something is wrong,
Mhm.
even when they're covering it with whatever they are using, pornography, substance, work, the phone, media, it doesn't matter. They're covering some kind of pain, and there's I'm gonna say I took the high ground. I stood at the back door when he was feeding the chickens, and I said, "Jesus is coming for you. You are doing it wrong."
Mhm.
Does that win anybody to God? Is that how Jesus would have done it?
Mhm. Mhm. I mean, I know many of us women are cycling back through our Rolodexes of moments in time with our spouses and going, "Uh-oh. Uh-oh."
Yeah, yeah. I mean, what does scripture say? It is better to live in the corner of the rooftop than to live with a nagging woman.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I was nagging, complaining, whining, And there were people who would support me in that and say, "Well, until you put that kind of pressure on him or until you tell him how awful he is, here's the truth. That person who is using whatever they're using because they're in so much pain knows, for one thing, they already feel guilt and shame, and
Mhm.
you hitting that over and over and over is creating more pain and a lot less safety. So what do you really want?"
Okay. So I'm sitting here going, I feel like we're in the deep end, and I wanna take a step to shallow for just a second. Lay the groundwork for me, Tanya. Because I think there are some of my listeners who are probably like, "Yes, I know I'm in a relationship where there's active addiction. Like, I'm aware of that. That's why I turned this episode on." But there's also, I mean, you talked about work, you talked about the phone.
Yes.
Talk to me about how can we recognize or diagnose if we're in an addiction cycle, whether in addiction ourselves or in relationship with an addict?
So here's a really interesting thing. Folks who are struggling with any type of addiction are great problem solvers.
Mm,
They need what they need when they need it at the time that they need it. So, one of the things you can look for is, are they giving up things that used to bring them joy, that used to connect them with other people to do this specific activity, whatever that
mm,
activity is?
okay.
And it is a progression. It's a little bit, and then it's a little bit, and then it's a little bit more.
Mhm,
Then when something that they used to enjoy or something that they felt they were responsible for or needed to do begins to interrupt that and they get angry. That's another way to know. Do they get really angry when you've seen it with toddlers? You turn off the TV show and man, their eyes get big and they're like, "How
yes.
could you do that to me?" Well, it's kind of a toddler response. If I need to feel normal by getting several dopamine hits from scrolling on the phone, or by getting the accolades at work, or I didn't get that promotion and I am really angry about it, so I'm gonna work harder and harder and harder. You've got the building of an addiction loop right there.
Mhm,
And what happens is just like in classic substance abuse is I'm going to get what I need, I'm gonna solve the problem, get what I need, but then it's gonna begin not to be enough. And so
mhm,
then I need more, and
mhm,
then I need more, and we especially see this with our teens with the video game, addiction is, okay, so they started out maybe playing, half an hour, they played with their friends, and they were still connected, and they still went outside, or they still did sports,
mm,
but then they decided they didn't wanna do sports.
yeah.
And then they stopped interacting with their friends on their games. They just came home and did the games. And then when you said, "Oh, it's time to shut it off," you got real anger,
Mhm,
almost out of control, probably sometimes out of control anger. Then you're headed down that slippery slope. So those are the things you need to be looking for. I think all of us in this country, except for the very few and exceptional, can see this with sugar. If you
mm,
think about it with sugar and
yes.
think about your favorite whatever your favorite ice cream, cookie, sorbet, whatever it is, and you're like, "Oh, that, caramel macchiato at Starbucks is absolutely my favorite." Well, you're only gonna drink 1 because 'cause they're crazy expensive, but
Mm,
if they were cheap, how many would you drink in
yes.
that day? If they were cheap and close, how many would you drink? Because your body begins to desire that. Now, not all things necessarily become physical,
Mhm.
but they become habitual. So, if I
Yeah.
am used to winding down, I mean, you and I are the TV generation. If we're
Mhm,
used to having the TV on as the family eats or as they go to bed or as they do this, then we feel comfortable, it feels familiar, and if we're not doing it, what's wrong? What's
mhm,
happening? And that is the beginning part of it. When you stop doing the things that you care about to do things that will ultimately lead to problems in relationships, problems in your life, you're not meeting your deadlines at work, you're not doing those things. That is the beginning of it. And then it begins to deepen the circle because you need more, you need more, you need more.
Mm. Oh, wow. Okay. So now that you've got all of us well aware, you've diagnosed our problem, Tanya, you've got us. So, okay, first, let's talk about a phrase that you say that I just love, the other side of addiction. So, let's let's talk real quickly before we really dive into all of our issues that we see, our own addictions that we're seeing right now. Talk to me about the role that we play, and I think that we as women have a unique ability to get into this cycle of trying to help someone who is dealing with addiction themselves. So whether we're married to someone who has issues with food, or we're seeing our children with this freak out when the screens turn off, or we've got a parent that is in work addiction, and therefore they're not coming around and they're not seeing the grandkids. How do we show up? Like, how do we know that we're playing a role that's not serving well? That's the
Mhm.
first. I'm gonna stop there and let you answer that one, because that's a beast in and of itself.
It is, and let's talk specifically about women, and women in the church. I just helped out with a funeral, happy to do it, there
Mhm,
were men who were helping too. There is this idea of service that we are to give and give and give and give. Jesus didn't do that.
mhm,
Jesus gave, but he also stepped away.
yeah,
When the storm rises up, where's Jesus? He's sleeping.
mhm,
He's tired. His human part is tired. When the crowds are pressing in on him too much, he says, "Gentlemen, I've got to go and be with my father so I know what I need to do." So
mhm,
he is constantly modeling this. When he sends the disciples out two by two, he said, "If they will listen to you, find the person who has the availability to really listen to you, stay at their house, preach, do what you need to do. If they don't listen to you, shake the dust off your sandals and go."
yes,
So I
yeah,
want to set the frame that way. He is not condemning Martha when she is saying, "Hey, I need some help." What he's saying is the enemy of best is good. So
oh,
yes. So he's
yeah,
saying he's saying Mary has chosen what's best, and you're kinda going as a woman, I'm kinda going, "Okay, you don't get it. You didn't just walk in by yourself. You have a whole entourage. I need to make sure all these people are fed. What am I supposed to do? She's not getting up, blah." You're having this whole internal conversation when really what he's saying is, "I have this. I will figure it out."
yeah,
So I'm gonna throw another wingding at you is, we know fight, flight, freeze. We've
mhm,
all got that. And we all do different things at different times. So somebody comes in and says, I need you to do X and Y and da 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 da. And there are a lot of us that'll just disappear.
yeah,
Like, we're not your girl. And then there's some of us that when the husband comes in and says, we can't go on vacation, we need to do this because here's how the money is. We put up our dukes and say, "Woof, we're
mhm.
going for this." But there's another one. There's fix.
Oh, mhm,
And in our culture, I think in most world cultures, we are expected to fix many things. Oftentimes, we're expected to fix the relationship or be the person who smooths things over, makes things right, or the peacemaker, all those types of things. When that becomes detrimental, so there's a couple times that becomes detrimental, and we'll talk about helpful help and unhelpful help.
okay,
Unhelpful help is when I'm doing something for somebody that, one, they don't want done in the first place,
mm,
right? So say you've gone and cleaned out your husband's garage or thrown away his good, well-worn shirt or those types of things. He's not real happy about that. It's unhelpful help.
right,
The other one is doing something that somebody can do for themselves.
mm,
And if you can hold those two things lightly, then you can pretty much see where you're going with this. So, there's a difference between gift and doing something that somebody can do for themselves. If we
mhm,
continued treating our 16, 17, 18-year-olds like they were 5, we're actually telling them, "We don't believe you can manage your life. We don't believe
Mhm.
you're okay. You need us to do these things for you, and if we don't take care of it, then it's not gonna be done right."
Oh, yes. Okay. Alright, and I'm gonna pause you for just half a second because what's coming to my mind is so many women, especially women of faith, carry these burdens on their shoulders, and I would say tell me if you would agree with this. I feel like what you're just talking about is such a key crux of the issue, is it's like, if I don't sit next to the child, they will not do their homework, even though they need to do their homework. If I don't remind my husband what the meal plan is, he will not eat properly. If I don't call up my parent and make sure they're drinking water, they won't drink the water, and so here we are carrying these burdens on our shoulders that ultimately belong to the other person, but the other person just doesn't care enough or isn't quite yet ready to carry them themselves. Is that kind of what you're telling me?
That's part of it.
Okay,
So, the other part of it is, and follow me here, this gets confusing, it's another loop.
I'm with you.
I love you and I want the best for you. If you are happy, then I am happy. If you're not happy, then I'm not happy. Therefore, it becomes my job to keep you happy. So, in what you're talking about, it's okay, if you don't drink the water, eat the right food, or do your homework, there could be consequences for you.
Mhm.
Hear that statement. There could be
Mm.
consequences for you
Yeah.
that make you unhappy, maybe even
Mhm.
less desirable to me. And then I become unhappy, and now it is my job to fix you. So let me give you an
Yeah.
example. I was friends with a woman who she packed all the kids' lunches and then she packed her husband's lunch and she's like, I'm just running out of time in the morning. I can't, she had a very high powered job. I can't get to my job. But if I don't pack my husband's lunch, then he, instead of eating what would be, a $2, $3 lunch that we've packed at home, he will go out. It'll be a 15, 20, $25 tax, not tax, but bill on our
Mhm.
family expenses. I don't want that to happen, so I'll just take care of it. Do you see the problem?
Mhm. Yes.
She's
Yes.
not having the conversation she needs to have to come to agreement about what they decide.
Mhm.
So if he decides to continue to do that, then they need to have a renegotiation about the budget, what that looks like, and then there needs to be some rebalance and some decisions. So for folks who are conflict avoidant, this becomes very difficult of,
Mm.
I really need to have the real conversation of, I don't value this. But let me
Mhm.
tell you the story in reverse. So there's another book and I wish I could remember it, and it's on finance. And he talks about his wife was extremely frugal, but she really liked, this is so funny to me. She really liked going out and getting oatmeal with these sprinkles and fruit and all that stuff on there before she went to work, and it cost $4 or $5 or something like that. And he said, financially, it would be better if she didn't do this. This is of such high value to her to stop, have this quiet time, organize herself before she goes into her workplace, that
Mhm.
this is important for her to continue to do. So we made room for it in the budget.
Oh, that's beautiful. Okay. So help me dial in on this a little bit because what you're describing to me is let's let the cost fall where it aptly belongs. I think this is sometimes where women of faith get kind of tripped up. There's also this call to kind of bear one another's burdens and to love sacrificially. So, for example, my husband does a lot of the dishes in our family. I do pretty much all the laundry. The children put away their own laundry. He washes dishes, I put away laundry. We're kind of pulling oars side by side. We're not doing the same work, but we're both serving one another. Or am I like enabling and I don't realize it? I feel
You
like
said
not, but
you said it. You're pulling oars together. You have come to an agreement of what needs to happen. Are you resentful at the end of the whatever practice you're doing?
is that the key? Is that how you know? Is that kind of your gut check? So if I go, I like folding laundry. It looks organized, it looks pretty in the drawer, it fits in there. He hates it. He would just wad it up, which is fine. He could do that. But like and then he doesn't love washing dishes, right? There's that line from the movie The Breakup where it's like, why would I want to wash dishes? We always say that to each other, but he's happy to. He plays his music. So we kind of so it's like, I guess I'm trying to put words around what you're saying. So tell it to me different, like, basically, I can know by
You
my
can
reaction. Is that what you're saying?
partially you can know by your response.
Listen, Mama, with as many different things as you're juggling, I'll bet some days you struggle to remember to eat breakfast. Failing to take care of yourself not only dampens your joy, but it also impacts your ability to serve those you love the most. And yet, you need an easy solution, something that will give you maximum impact without being crazy complicated. Sound about right? Let me share with you my favorite supplement and the only one of its kind, Modaire's Liquid Collagen. Since taking it, I've found more energy, more mental margin, and fewer lines and wrinkles too. My hair is also growing like crazy. One product helps me look better and feel better, and it tastes great too. Interested? Click the link below for a free quiz to figure out which blend is right for you, and then follow the steps to get free shipping and $25 off your order. Because healthy, well-fortified mamas build powerful legacies.
Men and women have different lists. So we have this perpetual list that goes on all the time. There's always something else we could be doing. We
Oh, yeah.
could always redo the closet, tear out underneath the bathroom, all that
Mhm.
types of thing. Men typically don't have that. They're like, okay, the door jamb is broken. I fixed the door jamb.
Oh, I see it. I feel it. Yes.
I'm done, right?
Mhm.
So to push our perpetual lists on them is problematic. But when you deal in the realm of addiction, it is he's not going to do that well enough. I need to take care of that. I need to if I don't control the checking account or the checkbook or the credit card, he'll go out and he'll spend us into the hundreds of thousands and it'll be over,
Mhm.
right? So we take control of all those things and quite simply we parent instead of partner. So as long as I
Mm.
am parenting and not partnering, and unfortunately, sometimes we get compliance out of threats, out of manipulation, out of secrecy. So with someone
Mm.
who is dealing with an addiction, they're having to live two lives because if you've already said this is not cool and this doesn't work in our house, and they haven't given it up, they've taken it underground pretty much. It's normally not on the table
Right.
anymore. So you're creating not only do they have to solve this problem, get the gratification, move into being satisfied, then move out of satisfied. Now they have to do all of that in secret. And
Mm.
that's where you begin to go, well, the dishes are still in the sink. Why? Why are the dishes still in the sink? Because he's off doing what he feels like he needs to do. And I'm saying he because we're women talking about this, but
Yes.
it could go either way. There are
Mhm.
plenty of women who have issues too. But one is resentment. Two is are you doing unhelpful help? Remember unhelpful help
Yes.
they can do it for themselves or they don't want it done in the first place.
Mhm.
And then 3, are they having to live in secrecy, right? And
Mhm.
4, are you building resentments? Now,
Mm.
resentments can be your own problem too, because we come into this marital situation going, well, this is not what my family did. This
Yeah.
is not what my family did. You're taking two sovereign nations and connecting them
Yes.
together, right? And these two sovereign nations came from their own culture, and then they're becoming together. I'll tell you my biggest pet peeve, and this is strictly about marriage, not about addiction, is God has asked us to come as a full human and a full human and create something new. He
Mhm.
hasn't asked us to come as broken and try and fill those holes with the other person because it's not
Mm.
possible.
Mhm. That's right.
And so when you're coming in with an addiction, there's a great new podcast out called Addiction Makes Three. So
Um,
you're coming in here, and really addiction makes four because you're both coming in with your own stuff.
yeah. Yeah. Your brokenness. And so what is the 4? Is the 4 the 2 broken halves?
So if you're coming if and I'll use myself as an example. I didn't marry my husband who was in full-blown addiction because I was well.
Yeah.
I married him trying to fix some other things, trying because I didn't feel worthy enough to marry somebody who had their stuff together,
Yeah.
right? I was too afraid to do that. It was too scary. So this person who wasn't quite functioning on all cylinders really seemed to need me. I could fix him even after I knew what was going on. Boom, we're in Alanon and AA, we're done. I got it
Yeah.
solved. I'm
You
still in
fixed
that
it.
fix
Yes.
thing. So I will leave you with the best phrase that I've ever thought of is houses are projects, not men.
Oh, okay. All right, y'all. You heard it. Houses are projects, not men.
And you can
Oof.
come to me and go, "Oh, well, iron sharpens iron and we need to help make each other holy." Yes, but
Mhm.
that's between you and God.
Yeah.
That's you changing you. You can you can spend a long time trying to change that other person in your life. You may be waiting forever for them to change. Whereas
Mhm.
if you spent that equal amount of time between you and the Lord going, "Where am I not seeing myself? Search me, O
Mhm.
God. Tell me my iniquities. Show me what I needed to do. Show me how I need to change."
Yeah. Yeah.
And we've got a very famous preacher who she says, "I kept praying for him to change. I kept praying for him to change. And the Lord said to me, he's not the one who needs to change." And she
Mhm.
honestly said, I looked up and went, "Well, who does? Because it's just me and him." I'm like, oh,
Oh, I see. I see. I took away the one and there's just me. Yes.
there's just me. There's
Mhm.
just me. So if
Yeah.
you're walking in with that, how you will really know is you and your husband have if something went awry with the laundry and the dishes and you said, "Look, I am covered up right now. I really need some help." Maybe we ask one of the older kids to step up. Maybe we ask
Mhm.
another family member to help for a little while, in that season. That is service.
Yeah.
Freely given is service. But if you're walking around going, "Nah, nah, 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 he can never, nah, 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 nah," that's resentment.
Yes. Yep. Oh, that's so good. And I think we one of the checks that I've noticed in myself is if I'm starting to even lightly joke about like, "Well, he can't fold clothes." Of course my husband can fold clothes, like that's and just using that example, but I mean, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of places where I'm well aware of my heart issues in the other direction where I'm like, "Yes, I'm mothering in that area. Yes, I need to grow." Um, so I think this is beautiful. I feel like we could go so many directions right now, but I've got 2 more in mind. The first one is this: take me through what we do in that space where someone dealing with active addiction is still in it, and we are endeavoring to walk in wholeness before the Father. And I think particularly of a little you just gave this example of if I give him access to the check or if he manages the books, then we're hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. If he's the one that's in charge of, taking care of the children, then they're never brushing their teeth again or whatever, that those moments, what do we how do we walk this out recognizing that we're in an imperfect situation and we're endeavoring to walk in greater wholeness and healing? What does that look like?
I think your audience is already there. So speaking to your audience, you get with God first.
Mhm.
And there's a simple little prayer that says, "God, show me what I need to see and blind me to what I don't need to worry about."
Ooh, okay. That's amazing.
Which, I mean, when you think about Mary holding Jesus, Jesus had to raise God, or Mary had to raise God's child. How panicked would you be raising God's child?
I
So,
know.
personally, this is not doctrinal or anything, but I think that God kind of blinded her to, this bigger picture and let her raise this baby human.
Yeah.
Right? She needed to do standard baby, change the diaper, feed the baby, all those things. So, the first thing is get with God and say, "What is it that I need to be doing?" And keep asking that
Mhm.
question. He is the only one that knows everything.
Yeah.
Then you need to get with community and say, "I need support." That's
Mhm.
where the shame comes in, that's where we're not willing to talk about it. There are so many more groups right now, Christian groups, Celebrate Recovery, Alanon, I run a group, lots of people run groups, where come in and it's not about being the victim because we know the Heavenly Father is going to protect you. He is the person who protects the you with the little lambs. There is protection for you. So
Yeah.
get where you can get protection. If you are in any way in physical or verbal or financial danger, go to the church, go to a victim advocate, go someplace where you can get help. So let's
Mhm.
but we'll put that aside. As you said, the deep end. We'll put that
Mhm.
aside. You really do need help there. Now, unfortunately, some churches are not equipped to handle this.
Mhm.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
But there is Celebrate Recovery out there, and they are in a Christian format. So, the next thing that you need to do is assess what you and God can tolerate,
Mm.
right? So, if it is important for your husband to continue and he's able to have a relationship with the kids and you need to go out and get some time for yourself and the children don't brush their teeth that night, can you tolerate it?
Yeah.
Is it that big of a deal? If the children are in danger, then that is a big deal.
Mhm.
Then you need to reach out to your community, have some other support. What you can't do, this is what most women in this situation do, is they just take over everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
They manage the kids, oftentimes they go to work, sometimes he doesn't work, and they manage all the bills and the finances and everything. Sooner or later, you will break down and just be exhausted
Mhm.
at that point. That's where I've got a person I'm working with right now, and her beloved has racked up some bills that, in a way, will impact the family, but also are really only in his name.
Mhm.
We're working on her pulling her hands off. She's like, "But I don't wanna."
Mm.
I get it. If you don't let him have the consequences, then it's never going to get cleaned up.
Yeah.
There's a difference between him paying off high interest credit cards from the job that he has that, yes, will impact the fun things the family can do versus impacting them being able to eat, have shelter, have, a vehicle to drive. So each case is different as far as that's concerned. And even the AA Big Book talks about that in the sense that, yes, there are some times that we do some things that might be enabling that keeps the family running until, here's the big piece, until we can decide what the next best thing is.
Mm. That's so good.
So God has the answer, and He has people who will help you for
Mhm.
sure. You have to ask. And unfortunately, I have in my own story, some of the people that I work with have in their stories. Sometimes they ask, even people who technically are equipped to do this, police, sheriffs, sometimes therapists, and they don't get the help they need.
Yeah.
What you want to go back to God about is, God, I know I need help.
Mhm.
Please don't let this shame overcome me. Put in my path the people who can help me.
Mhm.
'Cause they're out there. They're out there and they want to help you. You have to get past yourself to ask for help.
Oh, that is so good. Okay, so we've just scratched the surface of that side of things, but what I just wanna highlight from what you said is the importance of community. Like, this one conversation right here doesn't provide all of the context and nuance that we can't address that all right now, but
Right.
this is kind of the gateway. So if you're sitting there going, "Oh, I see this cycle that we've been in, I see how I've been trying to take everything in my hands and take the reins and take control and try to manage, and I'm moving towards that burnout." Like, if you don't know a step to take, grab Tanya's information in the links below and get connected. She's got a Facebook group. We're gonna have you tell all the things that you have in just a second, but
Sure.
I wanna stay in flow for just before we move into that. Um, this is the gateway, right? This is the diagnostic moment to go, "Okay, yes, I see this, Lord. I see that I need help." And then the next step. Now there's another piece, and I told you guys at the beginning that this show was for everybody, and we've touched on it a little bit. But what about the flip side where we're seeing our own addictive behaviors. Like, one that I am really struggling with right now is my phone, where I'm listening to you talking, I'm like, "Oh, I feel it, I feel it." I'm irritable when the kids interrupt me, quote, unquote, "interrupt me," right? Because it's their like, they are my top priority, and they're interrupting this, like, you know, 3 by 2 inch, box that's taken over. What are the first steps? We're in diagnostic mode, we're in that just very scratch the surface, right? What are our first steps when we see I'm in this loop? What now?
This gives me so much joy because if I'm trying to cure or fix what's outside of me, I'm not in the right place. But
Mhm,
if I'm aware that there's an issue and I'm trying to work with myself and God, and maybe I have some accountability partners, maybe I have some accountability apps, those types of things, then I'm in total control,
mhm.
right? It
Yes.
doesn't always feel like I'm in control, but I'm in the right space. This is where God can see me.
Mhm. Yes.
So, if you feel yourself starting in that loop, you need to go back and look for the triggers. Why are you abandoning yourself? Because what you're
Mm.
doing is you're saying, I'm
Oh,
overwhelmed.
why
So
am I
I'm going to
abandoning myself,
abandon
Tanya?
myself.
That's so good. Why am I abandoning myself? Okay.
Well, here's the other thing that's so difficult is when who does God love? God loves me. Right? He created me. He knit me together in my mother's womb. He wants to know me. When I abandon myself, who does God see?
Mm.
There's nobody there. He
Yeah.
can't help me if I just he designed it so we have free will. So if I abandon myself, right? God still knows that I exist and all those things, but he's like, I don't know what to do with her because she's not even there anymore.
Yeah.
She's walked away.
Yeah.
I'm not saying not take rest. I think we need to be here's the key. I think we need to be a lot more intentional with rest. So when you're picking up the phone and doing for the phone, are you telling yourself, one, I'm resting,
Mhm.
I'm checking out for a little bit,
Mhm.
I'm doing work.
Oh,
We
yeah.
hide in that one, right?
Uh-huh.
I'm doing work. What are you telling yourself? Why now?
Mhm.
And have you abandoned yourself to do that?
Mhm.
And what if for your highest good, if you brought this to the Heavenly Father, if you and I sat across the table from Jesus and you said, I am really struggling with this cake and this phone. What where do you see my life? What do you
Mm.
see for my life?
Mhm.
What do I need to hang on to? How can I live the fullest life? Because I can imagine, Anna, as sweet as you are with your kids and as much joy as they bring you, when you're scrolling through your phone and you're snapping at one of your little ones, it's the enemy, right?
You're right. Yeah.
Because all of a sudden he goes, guilt, shame, guilt, shame, guilt, shame, guilt, shame. And
Mhm.
you're like, "Ah, I need to do the work. I need to be with them." So, what is it, Lord? Is it I take this 30 minutes here and I take this 30 minutes there and then I put it down and I'm fully for my kids? Or
Mhm.
am I so enmeshed in my children? Sorry, Anna. Am I
Mhm.
so enmeshed in my children? Am I over involved in my children that I need to
Mhm.
back up? I mean,
Yes.
because the computer, you and I are talking because of this. We're friends because of this. These
Yeah.
are not evil.
Right.
It's the same argument with money. It is not that money is evil, it is the love of money that is evil that you put before God that makes it
Mhm.
evil, right?
Mhm. Yep. That's so good. Well, and when I think about you talking, I had this moment this morning that was so, it was so obvious in the way it played out that I could really look at it and and feel a lot of compassion for where I was, but also be like, I don't want to do this anymore. I had
Yeah.
gotten off a call that was really hard, and I started crying. And I was just feeling the grief and feeling just the sadness of where, of where like the things that had come up where we were given the conversation we just had. And then I raised my head and I started checking my Facebook messages. And I was like, "Oh, love." Like, and what I've noticed is when I'm in addiction, I have shrunk my emotional experience. I'm
Mhm,
cutting off grief, but we can't cut off one tail of our emotional experiences without losing the other. So when I cut off
mhm.
grief, I also cut off joy, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm losing both. And so I have to be willing to grieve. I have to be willing to accept things for the way they are, even when I wish they weren't. And a lot of times when we ask that question, oh, your question, man, I just can't let it go. Why am I abandoning myself?
Mhm.
That underneath it is often something that we need to feel. Would you resonate with that? Like that we need to feel a grief or
Absolutely.
we need to feel an acknowledgement of I'm carrying too many burdens right now. Like, does that resonate with you in your experience?
Absolutely. So let's bring it back to addiction. If I am choosing not to feel, then I'm substituting something in place of those feelings. When I substitute those things in place of those feelings, then one cookie is too many and 1,000 is not enough,
Yes.
right? So I've substituted that in. Then while I'm doing that, I've abandoned myself. Who cares more about us than we care about ourselves?
Mhm.
When we abandon ourselves, it's like he's trying to put his hand around us and he's like, "Woo, she just disappeared.
Yeah.
Where'd she go?"
Yeah.
Because crying after a hard call and releasing that emotion will bring you back into regulation. So we'll use big,
Mm.
big therapy words. Will bring you back into regulation to where you feel normal and you feel okay. Going to Facebook, you're also trying to regulate,
Mhm.
but it's such a false regulation. The tears were important, probably a deep breath, maybe a walk outside, the Our Father, whatever you've got memorized scripture-wise I love Annie Lamont when she says the 3 main things are thanks, help, wow, you know? I get off some of
That's
those
great.
calls and I'm like, "Wow." And it isn't really it's sometimes a surprise wow, but sometimes it's just like
Mhm.
that humans are able to manage this at all. So
Mm.
bringing that to the Father and bringing that to Him and saying, "I don't I I don't know what to do with this. I don't know how to feel it." And like you said, with great joy comes great loss, or with great loss comes great joy.
Mhm.
We're going to be in that. When Jesus comes to Lazarus's tomb, he weeps.
Yes.
Jesus knows he's gonna raise Lazarus. Why is he weeping? Why is he not just strolling in with his disciples going, "Dun, dun, dun, we got this.
Right.
Boom, Lazarus, up you go." He weeps because the world has fallen. Death never should have been part of it.
Mhm.
The people around the community, they're beloved. Lazarus, Mary, and Martha are beloved to him. They're
Mhm.
weeping. They're afraid. They don't know he is weeping for humanity at that
Yes.
point. Not because he couldn't make all the changes, but because humanity has to endure this suffering
Mhm.
because of our choices.
Yeah.
So when you come to that, I'm thinking we as women, we give birth to these even if you haven't given birth, we are stronger. They've proved it in the army.
Mhm.
We're stronger than those guys. Our body will hold up and tolerate a lot more. We are strong enough to manage emotions more so. It's not gi We're not giving ourselves the opportunity because
Mm.
it's just like building any muscle. If you work out, and quite frankly, I'm in the middle of pickleball, so I don't know if you call that working out or not, but the more that I practice my serve, the more that I build that muscle. The more that I practice releasing those emotions, the more that
Mhm.
I practice releasing them to God, the better I'm able to begin to deal with the harder and harder and harder ones, because
Mhm.
what we know is death is going to take from us those people we love.
Yes.
That's the ultimate.
Mhm.
Addiction is going to take them sometimes in a more painful way because they're still there. You know that they're in there, but you can't reach them.
Yes.
And how do we do that but to give that over to God? And we're kind of circling back to the addiction loop and to say, "Hey, um I don't know what to do here, and don't pray this unless you're ready. I'm ready to do whatever you ask me to do."
Mm. Yes.
And that may be for a time. God is always for marriage, but he's not for abuse. So that may
Mhm.
be a time of separation. That may be letting go of somebody you really care about. It's not saying
Mhm.
I don't love you. It is setting up, we talked about this earlier, codependence. So
Mhm.
codependence has its roots really in compassion, co-suffering. I love you. I care about you.
Mhm.
You you cannot be in my space if you're gonna treat me or my children or my family or whoever like this. We can't continue like this
Mhm.
because you may be the only chance that they have to see Jesus' true love and to save their lives. Because what does Jesus say to the rich young ruler? Rich young ruler says, I want to join you. I want to be part of you, blah, blah, blah. He said, great, sell your stuff and come along. And he
Yeah.
was very sad because he was very rich, right? Jesus
Mhm.
set a boundary. He said, if you're going to be part of me, then I need to have all of you.
Mhm.
But if I can only have this little piece, or if you just want to put me on your charm bracelet, I can't work with that.
Yes.
Now don't hear that of you need to have all of your spouse. God is the only person who has all of your spouse,
Mhm.
right? Your spouse still needs to be that independent person. Both people come together to form a whole new union. I think
Mm.
I went off on a really big tangent.
I know. Yeah, it's so good. It's so good though. Yes. I mean, we brought it all in. It was like, what do we do when we're in addiction? What do we do when we're with someone that we love and they're in addiction? Like, how do we walk this out? And the bottom line of what you said is it's all about the Father, that we come back to the Father.
So let me give you the scripture you gave me for today. This is one of my life verses. It's Psalm 16:5. The Lord is my chosen portion and my cup. You hold my lot. The boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. I have a goodly heritage. So even God talks about boundaries and
Mhm.
said, this is, you know, I want you to be well. So I set these things just like we do for our kids and say, putting your hand on a hot stove, eating cookies until you burst, running out in the middle of the street just isn't working. And our emotional boundaries are very similar in that, okay, I keep doing this over and over again and getting burned. Do I want to continue doing the same thing?
Yes. Yes. Mhm. That's so good, and I think so important to acknowledge that there are boundaries within marriage. We are 2 who are becoming one, but there are still 2 unique persons, and
Mhm,
it is okay to say, "If you're gonna talk to me that way, I will need to leave the room."
mhm,
You know,
absolutely.
to set up those things that's actually a way of protecting love. To
Mhm,
say, you don't just get to take chip away and chip away and chip away because then I won't be whole, like that and what we've tried to build cannot sustain in that way. So these protections are part of really protecting the unity in marriage.
mhm, mhm.
Mhm.
And protecting the legacy. So in the verse, it talks
Yes.
about the godly heritage. We're not, and even if you don't have children, you are mothering and fathering other people in relationship.
Yes.
So as you are growing up, you are growing up people along with you. So in addiction, we say you can't cure it, you didn't cause it, and you can't control it, but you can influence it. How do
Mhm.
you want to influence? Positive or negative? And
Mhm.
it's the 4th C, which is actually contribute. That's been kicked out of the program. I never heard that until somebody who is quite senior in some of these programs said there was you contribute. You can contribute
Wow.
positively or negatively. It's really your choice.
Mm. Oh, that's so good. Oh, Tanya. Okay, so we're gonna have to have you back on. We're gonna have to keep having.
I would love to. It's such a
I
joy
know,
to be with you.
I know, and you guys, just as a sneak peek, Tanya has a whole, video. Actually, can we link it? Can we link your communication conversation?
I think
As a
so.
Okay, or
Uh,
if we can't, we're just gonna bring you back on to have it. On communication skills and how to communicate well in marriage, and especially if there's an element of addiction. So there's so much more that we haven't even started to plumb in this conversation. But we talked about this as a gateway. We're kind of helping people, okay, come up and diagnose. Okay, yes, I see this. I see the addiction loop. I see it in myself. I see it in the person I love. Now what? We get into community. We get before the Father. So tell my people what it looks like to connect with you. What do you have to kind of
Sure.
take this conversation to the next level for people?
So I'm pretty much on every platform, which has its own issues. The Rise Above Addiction Facebook group, you can find that. It's for women. If there's men out there, I have friends in the field who could send you all in the right direction. There's plenty out there. Love to have you in there. All of the trainings, the things that Anna's talking about are in there. So just join it. It's all free. Just participate. Um, Addiction Recovery Connection is YouTube and Instagram.
What is it? It's somewhere. We're gonna put it all in
YouTube
the show
and
notes,
Instagram,
so
I
just
think.
scroll
And
down,
then
y'all. Scroll down.
yeah, just scroll down. But where I'd really like to have you is over on Sober on Purpose, and that's the
Mhm.
podcast. You can walk
Yes.
around, you can listen to it, you can, share it with friends, you can do whatever. But the Sober on Purpose, if you go way back in the archives, you can hear Jerry, my husband, and I talking, and he's a hoot. So he has since gone on, like you said, sometimes marriage says I need to be doing this and you need to be doing this. He's
Yes,
since
it
gone
does.
on to do his own thing and the podcast together. Occasionally he comes back, but it's a lot of fun. Bring on a lot of guests like Anna. We had what is becoming more and more prevalent and out in the open. We had a person who was dealing with sex addiction and really laid that out there. And I have another woman who is talking about sex addiction. And we want to believe that women don't do this,
Mhm.
especially women inside the church. That's not true. Her overcoming and her joyful, triumphant reentry with Jesus and back into the church and her family. And it's just, Ruth is amazing. So, Logan and Ruth, you could look for both of those if that's something. And then there's just a wealth of how addiction affects the family and the things that you can do about it.
Oh, so great. Okay, so we're linking all of that. So by the time you're listening to this, all you gotta do is scroll down. And then until next time, Tanya, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for
Oh,
being here
it's
and for
such a
sharing all
pleasure.
your wisdom.
It's such a pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Take care, guys. You got this. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of She Considers a Field. If you found value in this episode, I would be so grateful if you would leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts, and be sure to share with a friend who needs some encouragement on her journey today, too. Until next time, remember, you've got this because he's got you.